Hey everybody, how's it going? I'm Chase. Welcome to another episode of the Chase Jarvis Live show here on Creative Live. This is the show where I sit down with the world's top creators, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders, and I do everything I can to unpack their brains and bring valuable information to you with the hope of you living your dreams in career, in hobby, and in life. My guest today is a New York Times best-selling author. He was the former director of marketing for American Apparel and then wrote one of my favorite books of all time called Trust Me, I'm Lying, about media manipulation. Then a book called The Obstacle is the Way, which has helped popularize Stoic philosophy. And we're here to talk about his new book, Perennial Seller. My guest today is the amazing Ryan Holiday.
Thanks, man.
Thank you for being on the show.
Of course.
Second
I think
time
you were
on
my first big interview that I ever did. So.
Second time on the show,
Yeah.
and the first one was right at Trust Me, I'm Lying, which was like 4 years ago now? 3 years ago?
Five.
Five?
At least, yeah.
Holy crap. I'll never go 5 years without you being on the show. That
All
does.
right.
That means we've been doing this for a long time.
Yeah. You could say that it's a perennial show.
Shh. We're going to unpack the book, but before we do, we're in Austin, Texas. Where we were just talking about you were the last time you were on the show.
Yeah.
You were living in the middle of Los Angeles, were you not?
Yeah, I think I was either in Los Angeles or I lived in New York.
So one of those
very
two
urban,
places.
yes.
Super urban. I thought of you of like crazy renegade marketer who was hacking billboards for American Apparel and helping people launch, best-selling books of their own. And now we're in Austin, Texas. You just talking about you drove past the farm store.
Yeah.
What massive life change, and so have you moved to the country to write, or what's the story behind your life transformation?
I think one of the reasons I left New York was that there was too much going on in New York, and it was very hard to do work that I liked. In the sense of when you're in Manhattan, and even when I'm there, like on business, there's an unlimited amount of things, not only that you can do sort of culturally or sightseeing or whatever, but there's so many people there doing really great work that it almost feels like you're being irresponsible, not taking certain meetings, taking certain jobs, going to certain events. And so I found it was like incredibly hard, not just to write, but to do any sort of thinking or any of the work that had propelled me to be able to afford to move to New York City in the first place. And so when I live in first I just moved to Austin, just to like Austin proper. And part of it was like, I won't feel bad not being at a party in New York City if I live in Austin, because I live in Austin and I shouldn't be there, right? So it was a way of just sort of radically saying no and simplifying things. And then as things are wont to do, it quickly snowballed from me living on the east side of Austin to living very east of Austin on a cattle ranch. But it's been great.
I follow you on Instagram, of course. I follow everything you do, and I'm watching you feed carrots to donkeys.
Yeah, or this morning I woke up and one of our longhorns had jumped over the fence. So you spend all this time making this barbed wire fence. Of course, they can't go through the fence. You think you've all got it. And then you just watch this, 1,500-pound animal just right over the fence. And then, I don't know, it keeps me busy in a way that's very the opposite of what I do for a living. Yeah. And having that balance has been really, really good for me.
I will jump in that bandwagon. I love working with my hands, and so much of the work I'm doing right now is very it's
cerebral.
It's very cerebral work, and it's leadership and inspiring others and learning from others and applying that to the creative live world or to making videos and whatever we're doing. And I still love. We had mostly in San Francisco now. We have a home in Seattle, and we had a big remodel, and there was some I got to get into it a little bit.
Sure.
Oh, so good.
I think it feels good. It takes you away from what you're doing, but I've also found it's very humbling too. Yeah. So all the things I do at my farm, they don't require you to be smart in the way that I always thought of myself as smart. Yeah. So it's we're having this garden built, and it's like I hired my 16-year-old neighbor to do 98% of the work, and then I'm just sort of involved on the periphery. But it's there's not a lot of things that 16-year-olds are often showing me how to do.
Yeah.
or there's not a lot of things that I'm having to watch YouTube videos to like figure out. And so it's like the farm stuff, you don't have to be smart, you just have to be patient and you have to be tough, right? And like that's just so the opposite of what I do on the computer or what I do when I'm writing, and I think it's made me better at the other things that I do.
I love the connection. I'm going to go back 5 years ago to Trust Me, I'm Lying, and maybe even how you got into that whole world, because you were a marketer.
Yeah.
And so talk to me about how you landed up in marketing, and then the transition to, maybe how you identify it today.
Yeah. So 5 years ago, I sort of sat down and wrote a book, which today we would say is sort of about fake news and about the manufacturing of fake news, and how the system can be and is sort of manipulated by marketers to sort of get messages out into this very noisy world.
And whether marketers are companies or politicians or
sort
messages.
How information spreads in this sort of internet age. And I thought I was basically sort of lighting my marketing career on fire by writing, destroying it by writing this book. And it sort of went the opposite direction. I started a company that's worked with all sorts of cool clients since then. But what it really opened up for me was the idea of writing as a profession. And so that was my first book. And then I've done now, I think I'm on my 6th book. So 6 books in 5 years. It's been, let's say, exhausting, to put it mildly. But just the idea of being able to wake up and have an idea and write about it and communicate it to an audience, to me, is not only is that the end of marketing, that's like the goal of marketing, but that's sort of very creatively fulfilling. And so that's, I would say I sort of identify as a writer first, and then I keep my hand in the marketing world as a way of keeping things interesting, and then also making sure that I don't ever just want to be on the sidelines sort of talking about how things might be going. I want to actually
be doing the
know.
work. So when you wrote your first book, I'm going to go back to the fake news comment.
Okay.
Of course, when the political environment here in the United States is unlike anything I think that anybody saw coming, or if you saw it coming, you talked about it, people would like downplay it. And so you go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I was writing the book about. One of the messages I felt in the book was like, here's how I'm doing this when I work with author clients, or when I work with clothing companies, or when I work with funny people who are trying to get something, like trying to do some prank or some stunt. And to me, the ultimate message of the book was, if I can do this so easily with these things that don't matter, what do you think people with more resources and less ethics are going to be able to do? And I would say that, I don't want to say that message was dismissed, but it was, there was a lot of shooting the messenger there, and I think that came at our peril. I mean, and I don't think we want to talk about politics on this show, but it is interesting to think that Donald Trump has been talking about running for president since longer than I've been alive. Like his first, I think it was 86, 87. So he's talking about it. And then every 4 years he would talk about it again. And so what changes in 2015, 2016, it's that these forces that have been operating on our media system for so long got to a stage where the sort of act became real. And that's very, very alarming. And so I think people need to understand these things, not just like defensively, because you don't want to be manipulated. How many people were sort of, they wake up every morning and they're upset, and they don't know why they're upset, and they don't see what's acting on them. And then also you have to know that these are the things that you're competing with. So whether you love Donald Trump or hate Donald Trump, what he is an embodiment of how information spreads and operates in 2017. And you need to know, okay, one of the things I remember I was saying that people thought was funny on your last show is like, you have this charity that's supposed to help kids in Africa, or you have this message of inspiration or hope about something you deeply believe in, and then you're competing with lolcats and internet pornography and fake news and all of these things, and so we're all competing in the Facebook feed for everyone's attention. And if you don't know how to break through that, you're going to wonder why no one knows who you are.
So true. And to me, that was, I would say, largely made my photography career on the back of information spreading quickly. So that's one of the reasons that I was initially, besides just, was it Tim that introduced us?
I think so.
Tim Ferriss. Besides just being friends with another, having mutual friends, I was fascinated because I hadn't deconstructed like effectively deconstructed my own success, and it was largely around information moving quickly, and the information of how to take amazing photographs in a world wasn't just about some special technique that I had, that if the information was going to spread and that information was going to be available to everyone, so you can lean into it and lead with it, or pretend it doesn't exist and try and keep it quiet for as long as you can. And so I was the recipient of the benefit of sharing before it was trendy to do so. And when I saw the similarity I was aware of why I was doing it and that it was effective, but when I saw it as, wow, this is going to be much bigger than my little world, and today to have it affect politics the way it does and international news has been a mind blower. So,
well, you think about advertising, right? It's like on the one hand, as the photographer, let's say their job is to take this photo that's supposed to sell the product in the magazine or on TV or on social media, but then actually what advertising has really become, given the infinite amount of news sources we have, is really it's supposed to generate discussion and attention and chatter. And so it really changes what a lot of people's roles are. It's like, no, my job isn't to capture how the shoe looks. My job is to capture the way the shoe looks in such a way that other people will start talking about it on Twitter. And so these forces sort of crank up how controversial and interesting and provocative or crazy or weird things have to be. And if you just think your job is to take the best photo possible, you're going to be continually disappointed why your work's not breaking through.
Yeah, I just read that Adidas passed Jordan as the number 2 sneaker brand.
Really?
It used to be Nike, then Jordan, and then Adidas was, their market share didn't equal, their whole global market share didn't equal to what Jordan was in the US. And there were people just a couple years ago saying they should totally throw in the towel. And through tapping into cultural icons, for example, they have used that, whether it's unintentional or intentional, or just like we're going to go a celebrity route or whatever, and that has the fact that people are talking about Adidas making Adidas different and interesting is more valuable than all of the actual advertising in and of itself.
Yeah, of course. Or you look at like cryptocurrencies. How much of it is that people are like, oh, I really believe in this, or how much of it is like everyone's talking about it. So like these things, we're just so exposed to them and get so much attention that they become real. And that's both really empowering and really terrifying at the same time.
I'm gonna shift gears from trust me, I'm lying, to Stoic philosophy.
Okay.
So
a very natural transition.
Yeah, of course. But to me, it is natural because it explains so much of your recent success. I'm unabashedly applying a lot of this to my life. And I grew up, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but I was in a PhD program in philosophy. And people ask me all the time, like, or I remember my parents saying, "Are you going to philosophize about being unemployed?"
Yeah.
Or like, what is philosophy?
Sure.
And when I met my wife, Kate, she was like, philosophy, she was like, that's like sociology. It's like just like whatever path is going to get you the shortest, the quickest degree.
Right.
And yet it has been a tool for critical thinking. And when I think about Stoic philosophy, I remember learning about it a little bit back then. But you've brought this with maybe even the first book, The Obstacle Is the Way. You thrust it into the limelight of popular culture. Now it's everywhere. All the football coaches are talking about it. Strategists, politics, pop culture. It's everywhere. Give us a little backstory.
It's kind of sad, right? That this thing that we've done as a society or a culture for like thousands of years is dismissed as this like thing for academics. And like it's obviously a tool for critical thinking, and that you even got that out of it is like unique or unusual, right? But the truth was, for most of its history, ancient philosophy was not this academic discipline. It wasn't about thought exercises. It was supposed to be sort of practical lessons for what they would call the art of living. And so the Stoics almost didn't believe in what people were writing. They were like, how do you live your life? What do you do? And so that's the kind of philosophy that I'm really interested in. There's a line.
Is it practical? Is it practicality? Is that what it is about it? Or?
Yeah, I mean, so Epicurus, who wasn't a Stoic, but he would say, vain is the word of the philosopher which does not heal the suffering of man. Like the point is, it's supposed to help you in your life do what you're doing. Or Marcus Aurelius, who is one of the Stoics, he would say that no role is so well suited to philosophy as the one you're in right now. So the idea is you're a photographer, you're an emperor, you're a writer, you're a janitor. How can you apply these principles in your actual life, right? It's not, can you have this interesting debate about, do we exist or not? Is this a computer simulation? They would say, like, what should you do when you feel your temper coming up? What should you do when you're in a position of power or leadership? What do you do when you start to think about the fact that you might only have 20 or 30 years left in your life? Or what do you do when a friend of yours passes? Those are the kinds of situations that they would say that philosophy is designed for. And so I was really interested in it. Specifically, there's one exercise from Marcus Aurelius that the book is based on, where he basically is saying the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way, it becomes the way. And really what he meant is that we don't control what happens, we control how we respond. And that's the sort of element of Stoicism that I've tried to introduce as a writer. And yeah, it's shocking. The New England Patriots read it on their way to the Super Bowl in 2014. And then they beat the Seahawks.
You shut up.
They beat the Seahawks, and then
I love my Seahawks. That was the worst game ever. Sorry.
And then they gave so that's what's so interesting. It's like you lose a game on the 1 yard line that you thought you were going to win, that the decision you made in probably 99 times out of 100 should have given you that win.
Yes.
I sat in Pete Carroll's office in his chair, and he was like, "Look, what do you?" He was talking about. What do you do in that situation? How do you? And these are precisely the situations that
Stoic philosophy.
Yeah, the philosophy is designed for, because you can't go back in time. You can't undo what you did. You only control what you learn from that situation, how you carry yourself forward. What I loved, and he hadn't read the book yet, so this is all him, but Pete Carroll's response afterwards, they're blaming the quarterback, they're blaming the receiver, and he's like, I made the call, it was my decision, and I own it. That is a philosophical decision, to decide to take responsibility for something that you very easily could have pushed off on someone else. Yeah. And so that's the kind of philosophy that I'm really interested in.
So what I would like to do is take because even still conceptually, Stoic philosophy,
right?
There is a barrier from people saying, like, I really want to embrace Stoic philosophy as a mechanism to, again, the audience who are listening here, largely creative, entrepreneurial. That's what I've leaned into in my profession, and that's what Creative Live stands for. And so for the folks at home that are going like, whoa, Stoic philosophy, like, let's now go specific, and even the Seahawks and the Super Bowl, those are some abstract things.
Right. So first off, they're probably not saying that. They're like, that sounds super boring. I don't want to do any of that. But I get what you're saying. So the way that I sort of, Stoicism is basically 3 disciplines that I talk about. So the first is perception. So how do you look at this situation, right? Any situation. Someone is rude to you, your company's in trouble.
You need to get your work out there and be discovered and seen.
So do you look at it as this negative situation? Do you look at it as being totally unfair? Do you look at it as impossible? The way you're going to look at it is largely going to determine how you're going to be able to respond. Not the secret, right? Not like wish that it's good and it becomes good, but like, how are you going to see it, and what are you going to focus on? And so the Stoics would say, first off, you want to look at it as objectively as possible. They would say, like, there's no good or bad. There's just how we look at things, which is true, right? Because a negative situation to you there is somebody in another country who would literally kill for the opportunity to have that amazing thing happen to them.
Yes.
And so what you take from that is that, oh wait, how I see this, the perspective that I look at this thing is going to change it's going to change what I'm going to be able to do with it. And we have a huge amount of power. It's like, on the one hand, it's sort of disempowering to think that we don't control 98% of what happens to us in life, right? A car crashes through your living room, your plane is delayed, an investor backs out, all these things. You don't control those decisions because other people make them, physics and...
Sure.
But that final 2% is like what we tell ourselves that those things are or mean. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like I had a thing that went south a couple days ago, and I got this nasty email, and there might be some dispute over money about it, and I was really upset about it. And then I was thinking, like, well, first off, what did I do wrong in this situation? And I did a number of things wrong that led up to it happening. And so it's like, okay, let me take responsibility for those. And then second, is this not a wake-up call about those things? So obviously I'm going to try to fix this situation, we'll get it right. Maybe I am in the right, but at the very least, this is going to wake me up out of a sort of a stupor or a status quo where I allowed these things to happen. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So like that, the perception that we bring to things is like that's probably the most important discipline of Stoicism.
And is there a sense of, it's almost like awareness practice where you're asking yourself a question like, what does this mean?
Yeah. Well, if you think, so Marcus Aurelius' famous book is called Meditations, right? So he's meditating on these ideas, not in a sort of a Zen pose, but he's writing, we have this book that survives from this great man where he was just sort of like, there's this one line I love where he goes like, are you afraid of death because you won't be able to do this anymore? And he's like just implying like whatever crap that he did that day, that was a total waste of time.
Yeah.
That, one of those days where you're just like doing nothing. And then he's like, wait, this is what I'm protecting? And so he's just working on these things mentally, and he's also writing them down. I think journaling sort of part of it. But yeah, it's let's make sure we're thinking about these things right.
So you talked about a framework.
Yeah.
And the first part of that framework is really thinking like, wait, what does this mean? What attitude am I going to bring to this challenge? And this is where I love the practicality of this system. And I've seen it in the obstacles away and in just your work everywhere. But talk to me about steps 2 and 3. So one is how you look, what your attitude
then
is.
what do you do with this information, right? Yeah. Again, not the secret, not like, hey, this horrible thing happened and I said it's positive, so it becomes positive, right? No, it's like, what do you do with this information? I think one of the most compelling examples of this, if we can go historically, is you think about Eisenhower in the Second World War, and over again, this sort of German blitzkrieg has just had this devastating effect on the Allied forces, and after D-Day, it's this massive counteroffensive, like 200,000 German men in tanks, and there's this scene where Eisenhower, he calls all his generals into this conference room and he walks in and he says, look, I want you to see this as an opportunity and not as a disaster. And he says, there will only be cheerful faces at this conference table. So that's sort of that's the perspective side of things. What he's done is he's looked at it differently and he realizes that this sort of massive counteroffensive, this offensive mindset that the enemy is doing is also desperately overreaching, right? So they're rushing at you. If you break and you are intimidated by this, then it works. But if you absorb it and you encircle it, then there's an opportunity there. So this is what they do. If you think about, this first happens at the Follies Pocket and then at the Battle of the Bulge. So people have heard of the Battle of the Bulge. What you don't realize is that the Battle of the Bulge was the Nazis thinking that they're winning, right? They create this giant bulge in the Allied lines, but then slowly the bulge begins to close around them. So the discipline of perception is, how am I going to see this? What good is in this terrible situation? And then how can I take action and decisions based on this information? How can I exploit this opportunity, which he does? And it becomes this, basically, they take something like 50,000 German prisoners in the Battle of the Bulge alone. And so it's this idea of catching yourself, seeing it differently than everyone else, and then doing or zooming in on that thing that other people aren't willing to do or aren't able to see. So the second discipline of Stoicism then is action. You have to make this into something. Just because you see it is not enough.
Yeah, I'll take some notes. No, it needs to be active. Okay.
Yeah, we both know Casey Neistat, and Casey's saying, I remember this interview he did a couple months ago or years ago, and someone was like, look, I want to run this idea for a business by you. And he was like, I don't care about your idea. He's like, tell me when you've started it, and then show me what you've made, and then maybe there's something to do together. Yeah. And I think that's true on books or movies or companies, or just people are like, I'm thinking about running a marathon. Who cares, right? Like, I'm thinking about doing a lot of things that I never do, right? So what are you going to do, and what is your actual plan for doing so? I think that's the critical variable.
Did you list that as number 2?
That's 2. The third discipline would be the discipline of the will. How do you deal with those sort of overwhelming moments when life just sort of kicks your ass, you know? I tell the story of Thomas Edison in the book. He's an old man. He's the most successful inventor in America, and his factory burns down. And he rushes to this scene. It's still in flames, and his son is standing there, sort of shell-shocked. And Edison famously goes, "Go get your mother. She's never going to see a fire like this again." And he's just sort of embraced this thing that he can't do anything about. Yeah. And he tells a reporter that this prevents an old man from getting bored, essentially, is what he says. And so the Stoics have this image, they call it, their metaphor is fire. Their translation was amor fati, which means the love of fate. Mm-hmm. But basically the idea was like anything you throw in front of a fire only fuels the fire. And so the Stoics had this idea for the problems and difficulties that we face in life, that even the ones that we can't do anything about can still transform us or change us in some way, and we always have that power. And so they're almost, on the one hand, they're almost like preparing for bad things to happen. They're almost visualizing them in advance. Yeah. And then in some ways they're almost like looking forward to them because they know it's going to change them or improve them, or they'll make the most of it in some way.
The way I love this so much, and the way I have translated this into a message for the folks who pay attention to what it is that we're talking about here or the show, is that when shit gets hard, and it will, 100% guaranteed, if you commit yourself to anything that matters or is meaningful to you or any cross-section of the world, shit's going to get hard. Yeah. And when it does, you can either look at it as something that's there to keep you out, or something that is there to keep everybody else out who doesn't want it as bad as you do.
No, I love that. I say that all the time. I go, like, with books, if it were easy, there'd be more amateurs doing it, and there wouldn't be any money in it, right? Like what creates the financial upside or the recognition of the things that people are after is scarcity. Yeah. And so if it was easy, if everyone could do it, if it was naturally going to go your way, if there weren't those walls keeping you out, it wouldn't be worth anything. Yeah. It's like no one's proud of you for knowing how to drive, because everyone knows how to drive, right? Like a 16-year-old can learn how to do it, right? Like it's not an accomplishment, but launching a company or building a brand or working for this or that, these are things that not everyone can do, and that's why they're impressive.
Yeah, appealing or impressive or
or lucrative.
So I'm going to talk about ego for a second.
Okay.
And you have another book, one of the 6 now. I can't believe you've done 6 books, man. That's nuts. Title of the book is Ego is the Enemy. Yeah. And I think let's just talk about popular culture for a second, because it goes hand in hand with ego. There's so much in popular culture, and I think so many creators and entrepreneurs, as you try and stand out from everyone else. I advocate being different, not just better. But there's so much ego baked into the highlight reel of one's self, or the highlight reel of others, comparing to your dirty laundry. Right. What role does ego play in both the success and, if you don't believe it contributes to the success, to the problems for so many?
Well, I make a big distinction between ego and confidence. I say, I don't believe in myself. I have evidence, right? And that's where, and I'm only going to have confidence up until the point that the evidence supports it, and then everything else is sort of beyond where I want to go. Okay. But the nice part about that is it's in my control. I can go get more evidence. I can go prove more things about myself. I think one of the things that's so hard about our culture, clearly ego has always been a problem, right? Going back to the Greeks, hubris is the theme of all great Greek tragedies, right? Of course. But Odysseus didn't have to have an Instagram account, or didn't care how many Twitter followers he had, right? Yeah. So I really pity people. You and I were both lucky enough to grow up. I was just on the other side of it, to grow up and become a fully formed human being without social media warping who you were as you were becoming it.
Yeah, I think about that a lot.
Cheryl Strayed says, in your 20s, you're becoming who you're going to become, so you might as well not be an asshole. And social media makes people into assholes, I think, because it's like when I look at my Instagram feed, I know that that's not my life. First off, I know that I'm not that good of a photographer. That it's the smartest programmers and designers in the world are working to trick me into thinking that I'm better at this than I am.
Yep.
And then I only take photos of things that I think other people will like,
Yeah.
right? And so I know what happened in between those photos.
Yeah.
But then when I look at other people's, I'm not like, oh, this is a snapshot of their life. I see them running up the steps of a private jet or getting out of their Lamborghini or on the beach in Bali or something. And you go like, well, why am I not doing that? Yeah. Are they better than me? Am I doing something wrong? Should I feel bad about myself?
Yep.
And so these things are sort of warping us. So on the one hand, I would never dispute that this is not part of the age that we live in, that this isn't part of having a brand, that there isn't marketing. But it used to be that only public people had to do that delicate balance between their image and who they actually were as a human being.
Yeah.
And increasingly, that's a problem we all have, which is like, how do you play the game without believing in it?
Yeah.
And how do you do the marketing without marketing to yourself?
Wow. How do you market without marketing to yourself? And is there like a fake it till you make it thing in there? Or?
Yeah, it's like how do you play the hype game without buying into your own hype? And I think one of the things that I found about like really great companies and entrepreneurs and stuff is like, for instance, if I was like, pitch me Creative Live, you would give me the best pitch in the world because you know it. But then if I was like, privately, I was like, Chase, tell me all the problems with Creative Live, that would actually be a much longer list. Because so that like the CEO, the leader has to know, okay, here's what we're working on, here's where we're going, here's what we sell to people.
Yeah.
And then on the other hand, you have to be this ruthless perfectionist who's zooming in on the thing, on always trying to get better. Yeah. And so I think as a person, you have to know what you're working on, where your weakness, like if confidence is an understanding of your strengths, then you balance that out with humility by a very real understanding of your weaknesses. And if ego is just how all the things you wish were true about yourself, right? So it's the most dangerous because, it's like, look, just because you believe you can do something doesn't mean you can do it.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if you don't believe you can do it, you're probably not going to do it. But the idea of like faking it till you make it, to me, is very dangerous.
Oh, it's toxic.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've transformed that saying, I write fake it till you make, and then I cross out the fake and I put make.
Right, just
like,
make it.
Make it until you make it.
Right.
And to me, that's a little bit more healthy, but it's directly tied into that ego thing about like feeding yourself your own bullshit.
Yeah.
And you think that that's positive thinking or mental visualization, but it's really not. I think it's toxic and undermines your ability to succeed.
Well, we both love Austin Kleon's work.
Incredible.
And so I wrote about this in Perennial a bit, but I love his concept of like, you can't be the noun without doing the verb. And in some ways, the healthiest thing is to almost forget the noun and fall in love with the verb. And then that way it's like, you're not even concerned with how these things are coming off because I'm not thinking, like, I got very lucky when The Obstacles Away really started to blow up because I had already sold ego and I was getting my ass kicked every day by it.
Yeah.
So there wasn't like parties and celebrations, and it was in a weird good way. I almost wasn't able to enjoy it because I was too busy on
Focus
the
on
craft
the next book.
of the next thing. And so I think it social media makes it really easy to celebrate things before you've done them and then to reflect, to sort of become absorbed by them when you do have them rather than, doing the verb.
Like the verb, I just was with someone who's wildly successful. Most people would know this person's name off the tip of their tongue, easy to roll off the tongue. And they have an amazing opportunity at their hands, and they're asking some advice from a friend, like, hey man, like, what should I do here?
Yeah.
And the immediate place that I went to, and I'm not a great therapist, I end up being a pretty good career counselor because I've talked, face to face with thousands of people off stage and said, but what do you love to do?
Right.
So what part of this potential area of massive opportunity, like what are you going to actually do? What are you going to wake up and put your shoes on, your boots on, and go do? And if you don't love the doing part, the rest of this is a shit sandwich, and it's not going to work out. And how do you think about apply that, use a little bit of ego and the enemy to talk to the people at home about the thing that they want, whether they want to be a photographer or an entrepreneur or whatnot. Try and make a story out of that for me.
Well, one of the things I look at in my own career when I'm deciding to work with clients or I'm deciding to work on, a different project or whatever, is I try to go, okay, let's say I have these two opportunities. One's going to pay me a lot, and one's going to pay me not as much. Obviously, depending on, do I need this to survive?
Sure.
These variables are very real, and I don't want to dismiss them. But which one am I going to learn more by doing? And I think if you always take the learning one, or you take the learning one more often than not, it's going to keep you humble. It's going to make you, by definition, better in some way, and you're going to enjoy it more. We always appreciate what we've learned and that process of learning.
Yeah.
Oftentimes we tend to resent. There's a reason that people who make lots of money are often still very dissatisfied. People who are being challenged and learning and growing, I find it's less often that I'm learning a ton, but I'm just so miserable. You know what I mean? Like those don't go together very often.
Don't go together, yeah. All right, I'm gonna fast forward to perennial seller, because I feel like there's a nice lily pad from the media stuff up to perennial seller, and when I thank you very much for including me on your galley list. I got the early copy, and to me it was sort of an aha thing that was right there in front of you the whole time, right there in front of all of us in popular culture. We're trying to be successful not for the sake of success, but to make something that matters.
Yeah.
And it was like a face palm, like, duh. So walk us through the concept behind perennial seller, the art of making and marketing work that lasts. And what was the aha for you that said, this is a book that needs to be made?
The weird aha moment was this tiny thing in publishing. If you look at the New York Times bestseller list, which everyone sort of uses as the rubric for success in the publishing industry, it says very clearly in the fine print, like, not tracked in the New York Times bestseller list are perennial sellers. So what's a perennial seller? Well, it turns out the vast majority of income in the publishing industry comes from books that were published a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 100 years ago.
7 Habits of Highly Effective. How many?
Right, Good to Great, The Great Gatsby,
Sure.
To Kill a Mockingbird, right. What to Expect When You're Expecting sells like 1 million copies a year. And yet, 90% of the focus of the industry is about chasing something new.
Yep.
And it's been cool to see my books sell, like The Obstacles Away sold more copies last year than it did the year before, than the year before, than the year before.
Wow.
Paradoxically, less marketing from me, because the book does something for people. It's solving a problem, it's real. And so it's just so interesting to me that no one would dispute that it's hard to start a company, write a book, make a movie, yet most of this stuff just disappears. Like, even the successful ones sort of disappear very quickly.
Yeah.
And so I'm fascinated by stuff that lasts, right, that really survives. My favorite restaurant in Los Angeles is not some fancy Michelin star restaurant. It's the Original Pantry Cafe, which is across the street from Staples Center, that opened in 1924. And it's open 365, 24/7. So there's no locks on the doors of the restaurant, like, because they've never closed. And I just love that idea of, like, first off, they only accept cash. So it's probably just made millions and millions of dollars. And they probably report very little of it to the government. You know what I mean? Like, that, I would much rather own that business than, like, Nobu or Mr. Chow's or, that's so cool. And that, if we're really honest with ourselves, that's what we're trying to do. But we just end up getting distracted by the fact that, fidget spinners are popular, or that everyone's on that, and so I can only imagine in your space where it's like, you start this company because you believe in it, but then you see all these other people who have much worse companies that do much. It's like, oh, then they sold to Microsoft for X amount, and they sold to Yahoo, and they sold, and it's like, even though we set out to make something that lasts, we can get distracted by all the stuff that's going on around us. And so I tried to write sort of like a glorification of things that last, like the really great things, because why not? You know what I mean?
But those are the things that take up I believe the space in between what's the new just stuff that people are churning on, and when shit gets hard, or when pop culture goes south, or when there's a terrible catastrophe, or what do you fall back on?
Right.
And there's something that's sort of more real, or I don't know what it is. And I'll give you an analogy around Creative Live. We have now like almost 2,000 classes, 10,000 hours of content we've been making from the ground up for 7 years. And when people, well, first of all, when we started making this, an investor said, well, you should just like open it up and be a two-sided marketplace, so you get 100,000 classes. But I'm like, oh my God, there's so much junk in there, so we're gonna do it the slow way, and very, very intentional. But what we did is we developed this amazing muscle to make the world's best learning content with the world's top experts like yourself and Richard Branson and Tim Ferriss and Ariane Huffington, and the list of names is long and impressive. What we got so good at making stuff that what we were not good at is marketing things that were the best stuff in our catalog. What we ended up doing is just focusing on like what's tomorrow, because you get addicted when shit gets hard. You're like, what makes us feel good? We've celebrated as a culture in our company the releasing of a new title. And so then you're just like, when stuff gets hard, you don't actually stop.
We need more.
And I realized that this is fortunately, we realized at Creative Live, and we still make a ton, but we're looking at the things that, like for your example, your class, we can continue to go back and like how to stand out and get great artists for PR, or great PR for artists and creators, because is that ever going away?
No, and it is crazy because like, I mean, I get the checks, and I'm like, whoa, how is this? I've actually noticed that start to happen on Creative Live. Like about a year ago, it seemed like there started to be a spike again, which is very cool. And the truth is, almost all the creative industries are that way, right? Movie studios are putting out the new Transformers movie, but it's really A Christmas Story and Shawshank Redemption and Star Wars. All these movies that are just churning out, that people are discovering or watching on television for the 50th time. Seinfeld has made $3 billion. Not Jerry Seinfeld, the show. Seinfeld has made $3 billion since the show went off the air. Right, that's the value of making something that's do you know what I mean? Because we still work in offices, people still move to New York. They're still the themes of the show are still so true, and just think about it. It's like all the people that are chasing the new popular business book, right? Like how to become rich, in the Trump era, or some silly things like that, and then it's like, what to expect when you're expecting, or a book that college grads you give to your son when he graduates from college, or that you give to your daughter when she gets married. Like what are the books that solve a part of your life?
The example you give in Perennial Sellers, like turning 50. Right? Pretty much everybody, unless you have an unfateful death before then, you're going to turn 50. And that is a thing that everybody goes through. So how can you solve a problem? And that's maybe we can shift and get into some tactics.
I mean, that's right. What? So you want to go like, this is a blank that does blank for blank, right? Like, so can you actually fill in that question? Like, I love. I talk about Red Wing boots. Red Wing boots starts making boots in the early 1900s to equip the U.S. Army in the First World War. And they're still making the same boots. Like, their boot is called like the 1915 boot or something like that. And I have a pair that cost $300 when they came out, so that's very expensive, but I've had them resold twice. They get more comfortable every day that I wear them. People notice that. It's like, it's more expensive, but they're not having to roll out a new edition every year. And it was actually weird, the same way at American Apparel. One of the mistakes the company made was chasing the fashion seasons. Whereas the reality is, if you make something great, and you make the same thing over, you get better at it, it gets cheaper to make, the margins get better, and you have to do less marketing because there's word of mouth. And so when I think about my own books, I go, are people gonna read this in 10 years? Is it still gonna be true in 10 years? And if not, then it's probably not a great use of my time. Or let's just make sure that if we are writing about something somewhat timely, that we're focused on the timeless elements of it. I wrote a book about growth hacking, and that's how startups market each other. But it's almost 5 years old, and it's still selling because I focus not on the very, very specific cutting edge tactics, but on the mindset that goes into it, because one is going to last a little bit longer than the other.
And the examples, to go one step deeper there, would be like A/B testing versus like how to buy this type of ad on Facebook.
Exactly. Right. Here's a great app to get you more Twitter followers. Well, what if they go out of business tomorrow?
Yeah.
I was thinking about, I wrote about Snapchat in the book a little bit as an example of this, because when I started the book, they were called Snapchat. Now they're called Snap, right? And then Instagram launches Instagram stories, and all of a sudden Snapchat's usage is cratering. So it's like, your thing isn't going to last if it's based on things that are unlikely to last. My editor gave me this note early on in the book, and I was like, I made a joke about Groupon or coupon code or QR codes or something, and gourmet cupcakes, and she was like, imagine that someone is reading this book in 2040 in Thai. Would any of this make sense? And I'm like, no, it wouldn't. So I have to go deep. I have to pick some deeper analogy or deeper example that's going to be more timeless. So in the obstacles way, I'm not saying, yesterday my friend Steve and I were talking about, I'm going to tell you a story about Thomas Edison or Demosthenes or Odysseus, because look, the Odyssey has been part of our culture for 2,000 years, probably not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure that you're basing your work on really great stuff.
Let's deconstruct for a second the way that let's talk for a second how people can deconstruct their own work. I think when I talk to folks who are early on in their career, they're just starting out, they're trying to go from 0 to 1, consider themselves a maker, or they're launching a business or whatever, I feel like there is there's a lack of research and a lack of sort of thoroughness and a lack of understanding what you're going to say, what your critics are going to say, the stuff that is wildly successful by and large has a ton of research behind it, and it's very thoughtful.
Yeah.
And I think what people think is that they sit down and they just blast something out in
the lightning strike, the creative genius lightning strike.
Right. So talk to me about what your philosophy is and how what amount of work goes into it, and having studied it, what are the habits?
Yeah.
And maybe this is the punchline. What are the habits of the people who make great work?
No, that's a very great question. I would say one of the symptoms of this problem is a question I get all the time, where people go like, what influencer should I have someone promote my book or my movie or my start? And it's like, if you don't know those people's names, let alone you don't have, you should have personal relationships with all of them. But if you don't know who they are and you're asking a total stranger about this, you should hit the stop button as quickly as possible, because there's probably some fundamental flaw in your product that doesn't address, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you don't know your space well enough.
Yeah.
And so, I want you to resist that egotistical impulse of like, this thing that you've thought about for 8 seconds is gonna be wildly better than the people who have been in it for 10 years,
Yeah.
And it's not to say that it's going to take you 10 years to get caught up.
Or that someone else won't have a good idea.
Yeah, but put in the time to actually check your work, check the math, make sure it's actually true here. So one of the best ways, so it's like with a book, I know what I'm trying to accomplish, I know who I'm trying to reach. One of the reasons you have an editor, and in publishing you submit to an editor, and then that's a legal term, you submit the manuscript, and then they accept it. And you only get paid if they accept it. Like, it's contractually the submission and acceptance. It's so the S&A payment, right? What that forces you to do is go to an objective third party, and then they're going to give you all sorts of notes on your book. And a lot of their notes are going to be totally wrong, but like where their notes pertain to what you were trying to accomplish, they're going to be able to tell you if you did it or not. Harper Lee turns in To Kill a Mockingbird, and her editor says, this isn't a fully fledged novel, is what she said. Obviously, Harper Lee thought it was, or she wouldn't have turned it in.
Yeah.
But Harper Lee does something like 2 years of work on it, it comes out. Usually what that book looks like would be lost to us. But when Ghost Set a Watchman comes out, it's the original draft of To Kill a Mockingbird. It was really popular at first, but like, do you see anyone reading it on a plane? It's not very good, right? It's not good compared to the work that her editor forced her to do to create To Kill a Mockingbird, which becomes this life-changing epic novel where even Adele's last album is called 25, and each one of her albums is supposed to come out, is titled after the year she wrote it, or the year it was released, how old she was. But it came out when she was 27 because Rick Rubin made her do 2 more years of work. And so that's how it goes. You know, I think it's not, don't just think like it's almost impossible for you to see your own work objectively.
Yeah.
So you need to make sure you have a really strong network of creative collaborators that you trust who can be like, Chase, there's flashes of genius in here, but they're not connected together and you need to fix this. Or like, I tried it and I don't get it, you know? And then you go, well, that's okay because it wasn't made for precisely for people like you. Or perhaps that person is your ideal target customer. And if they're telling you like, I don't like it, you gotta listen to them.
Yeah. So what role, I talk about a thing called the other 50%.
Okay.
And in creating, I think most people believe that it's just the product, that a great product just you make a great product and then it's wildly successful. And the approach that I've taken is no, the great product is the get in the door fee.
Yeah.
Like then you're actually on the field.
That's the buy-in.
Yeah, that's the buy-in. Or like I don't know why, but I use professional golf randomly. Like the 300 golfers who are on the PGA, the men's PGA or the women's PGA, the LPGA, like the difference in skills is it's nominal. It's like the amount of distance that they can hit off the tee, the amount of putts they sink out of 10. And yet, how many golfers' names do you know?
Right.
There's so few. And so it's basically, it's what you think is 90% craft and 10% all the other stuff is sort of probably the other way around. You have to be great at your craft, and I don't ever want to diminish it, but it's this whole package. And now then, so you zoom out a little bit, you see it's not just the thing, then you zoom out and you say, oh my God, it's the total package. And then what I do is I draw a line right there and I say, great, that's 50% of the thing. And the other 50% is cultivating relationships and community around the things that you're trying to make. Like you said, if you want to launch a product, you know who the influencers are. You've stopped at the other 50%. And if you don't know that you're 50%, you have 50% less chance of success.
Right.
Respond to that for me.
When you think about the golf, it's like you have to qualify for the PGA Tour. So you have to win something that proves that you deserve to be there, and then you have to keep winning, right? But the way I think about it is, like I say with creative projects, is like making them is this marathon, and it's the hardest thing you've ever done. And then you just barely stumble across the finish line. And then, you know, the race proctor, they grab you and they by the hand, and you think they're taking you to the rest tent or to the medal stand. They're going to put the medal. Actually, they're grabbing you and they're just directing you to the beginning of a second marathon that you're not at all prepared for, right? But that marathon is marketing, it's positioning, it's packaging, it's relationships, it's investor. It's all the things that go into taking this idea and making it, and then getting it from your physical space to my physical space. And there's a lot of overlap between the two phases, so it's not a perfect analogy, but the idea that if you build it, they will come is killed so many great projects. And you have to remember, given the economics of how content and stuff works today, is like, you're not just competing with the other people who started at the same time as you. Like, if I make a YouTube series, I'm not competing with just the other YouTube series. I'm competing with the fact that on Netflix, I have access to some of the greatest shows that were ever made. Like, think about you're in television, it's like, think about all the people who have never watched an episode of The Wire yet, or Breaking Bad, or Mad Men. Like, you're competing with those, you're competing for those customers with those proven products that are objectively amazing. And so marketing is the tool that you use to win that fight. And so are relationships and your platform and your relationship with your fans and all these things. So the idea of just like, the world no one's like, we really need more amazing stuff. They're like, why should I choose your amazing stuff over this other amazing stuff? And by the way, this amazing stuff, it's free. And
it's been around for 50 years and it's time tested and it's on billboards and on all the award shows and all the blah, blah, blah.
So it's really, really, really hard.
I was scrolling through my phone the other day looking for a photograph, and I came across a photograph of you, me, Scott Belsky, and Tim Ferriss at
his party.
At a party that Tim threw, and made me think of Scott, who was on the show 2 weeks ago, something like that. And he's like, there's so many great ideas in creatives' heads that aren't going to be successful because they don't have their shit together.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you could react to that. Like, what does it mean for the folks at home who are like, I want to have my shit together. So what is having one's shit together? Is it this other stuff?
I think about it like, because I think about books a lot, because I work with lots of authors and I have to think about it with myself. But like, don't judge a book by a cover. That's why books have covers. You know what I mean? Like, that's the whole point of the cover, is because that's what people do.
Yeah.
Right? And so, like, I'll see products, and here's a good example. Wealthfront. Okay. Huge startup, billions of dollars under management. I use it. I think it's wonderful. Its first name was Kachingle. Would you put your retirement money in a company called Kachingle? I wouldn't.
No, because I could never find it in the App Store. How do you spell Kachingle?
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Right, it's totally ridiculous.
A company isn't going to urge their employees to put their 401k in Kachingle, but they will put it in Wealthfront. Or did you see the Tom Cruise movie, The Edge of Tomorrow?
No.
Okay, it's a great fucking movie.
Okay.
But The Edge of Tomorrow is not what the movie's about, and it's a terrible title. And so when they came out on DVD, they couldn't change the title, but they just rejiggered the poster so that it had the tagline was live, die, repeat, which is the movie is he's stuck in this continuum, and so like every day he dies at the end of the day until he can get to this thing. So he's waking up. And
I did see the film. I saw the film. Okay.
Right. Terrible title, right? Live, die, repeat is an amazing title for that movie. So these things, title, cover, logo, copy, the people who are involved with the product, these things have an incredible, we wish that they didn't, but they have an incredible impact on whether people are going to try them or not. In the same way that you would judge someone coming into an interview wearing shorts and sandals and their hair all disheveled, we judge work that way. And so especially now that lots of people are self-publishing, you already have a knock against you, so you have to be twice as good to get over those reservations. And so these things can't be ignored, they can't be phoned in. They're as much as part of the creative expression as the work itself.
Yeah. You have the concept of hacking is the word is the vernacular, I think words matter, and it came out of computer software and then the term growth hacking to make a reference to something you said earlier. I'm wary of the concept of hacks because the people who hack things, and if it's not repeatable, then it doesn't, like, to me that's part of what distinguishes something or someone who's able to be successful. And you look at the most successful people and they repeat their successes over and over. Do you, for the folks out there who are looking for quick fixes, like, do you throw them in the trash and don't even talk about them or think about them? You've written a book called Perennial Seller. Is that antithetical to hacking? And or there's some, would you take hacking out of hacking category and put it into like, these are best practices, or help me reconcile
as long as you're not using hack as in terms of shortcut, then if you're using hack as shortcut, then it's a dangerous word. If you're using hack as creative way of doing something, a way of combining this thing and that thing to create something new, then I think it's very positive. There's just something in our culture where it's like people go like, they want this frame, they want like step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like as if that would work, and if it would work, how quickly it would be exploited and used by everyone. Yeah. So I think what I try to do in my books is not create a formula, but to create sort of a set of principles that are always going to be true and that you can think about in lots of different situations. And so I think go to the principles that undergird like an industry or a space or a career path that you're on. Don't look for shortcuts, because it's like if you're already looking for the shortcuts and you're not you haven't even started, what does that say about when shit gets really hard?
Yeah.
You're going to be like, done. You're not going to have what it takes.
For sure, you're certainly not attracted to the verb.
Yes. Right. Yeah. You have to actually like that it's hard.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think people want this like tried and tested formula, and it's never. Not only is that never possible, but you wouldn't want it to be possible if it was.
And by definition, if it was that easy or that possible or just a series of steps that anyone could do, it would be wildly exploited and there would be no upside for you, no real upside for you. It'd be like driving.
Yeah, exactly.
You can learn how to drive.
Congratulations.
Yeah, nice job.
Right. Chase Jarvis, he's been a photographer for all these years. He's built this company, also has his driver's license. Like it's
not on the list of shit to do.
Right, it doesn't go in the bio.
Got it. So let's get tactical. Again, okay. I think part of the Stoic philosophy is like, what are you actually going to do?
Yeah.
Like, what's the action, that second step? And is there, there are some helpful frameworks in the book. Give us a couple of frameworks for people to chew on. And again, this is a book that's dense enough that you're going to want to get it. This is not the solution. This interview is not the solution to perennial seller, but.
I mean, I'd like the book to leave people some questions to ask when they're starting. Like, I tried to create something you could reread every time you're starting on a creative project. Mm-hmm. So the first question that I think entrepreneurs and creatives forget all the time is like, who is this for? Because they're making it for themselves, and that's not a big enough audience. Yep. Or they haven't thought, like, I'll ask who this thing is for, and they'll go, everyone, smart people, Malcolm Gladwell fans, or whatever, right? Yeah. So who is this for? Like, do you actually know what your product is for? Or are you a solution in search of a problem, which is a very dangerous place to be. So who is this for, I think, is a very important question that I would not just like, oh yeah, I know, but like actually, who are they? Where do they live? What do they do for a living? And then what does your thing do? My editor said to me once, she's like, it's not what a book is, it's what a book does, right? What does my project do for people? So Creative Live is like a full toolkit for anyone trying to do basically any creative profession. That's very clear and obvious. And then because it does that, there's the chance that you have word of mouth if you can bring those customers in. I think that's very important. On the marketing side, I want you to think about how crazy it is that anyone buys anything, right? Like, so it's like, if you think about all the stuff that's free out there, like take a book. So this book is, where's the price? Is it on here?
I think it's on the inside front
on the
cover.
Front? All right, so $26 US. I'm asking people to give me $26 and a week of their time for something they don't know what's in these pages, right? So one of the reasons I do interviews, I give tons of content away, I make videos, I excerpt it widely, is because I know how crazy it is, like what I'm asking. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I just spoke at a conference that was full of writers yesterday, and I had the publisher give away 250 copies because that's the exact community that I'm trying to reach.
Yeah.
And so it's like, chances are your product is the best possible advertisement for your product. And so I want you to give it away for free as much as possible. Yeah. I'm not saying work for free, and that is a dangerous thing people get taken advantage of, but who are the people that need to read this or that need to experience it or are gonna talk about it?
Yeah.
And make sure that you've brought them through your system.
Yeah.
I think that's all marketing is, right? So people are like, oh, I figured out how to hack Facebook ads to get a real, it's like, have you ever bought this thing? Have you ever bought something from a Facebook ad? Meanwhile, somebody gives you a book for your birthday, and then the next thing you know, you bought it for all your employees, right? So understand what you're asking people when you're buying and just how expensive it is.
Yeah.
And make sure your marketing and your creative efforts are designed to make it as accessible as possible. And then the last big lesson I would give is like your platform, right? Like everyone wants a platform, but they don't want to put the work into it, and they want it now, and the best time to have made it was 10 years ago. You know what I mean? Or 5 years ago, or yesterday. Yeah. So, what's that thing about a tree? It's like the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. Second best time is right now.
Yep.
Like, don't be thinking just how to market this thing you have in front of you. Like, what are you going to need to market over the course of your career. If you want to end up with 1,000 true fans, how are you getting number 640 and 642? How are you doing that? And so from a marketing perspective, I'm thinking about building a body of work, thinking about building a reciprocal relationship with fans, thinking about owning that permission-based connection. And if you're not doing that, you're at the mercy of newspapers and social media and television. And if they decide, sorry, we've already talked enough about online courses. We're not interested in promoting another thing. They're like, okay, I guess I'm done, right? And you don't want to be in that position.
Yeah, I've noticed that you're doing a lot of speaking.
Yeah,
and certainly it's a great way to sell books, but it's also to be able to experience your rendition of the book and the ideas therein. It's very compelling, and a lot of the folks that hire you to speak are companies.
Yeah,
and given the way that you've thought about it, and given that between a third and a half of people who are watching here are inside of companies.
Yeah.
Some are leaders, some are not. Doesn't matter. But talk to me about some of the qualities of let's maybe just go through a couple, like team building or leadership, or let's talk about leadership. So, when you go to speak at these big companies, what are some things that are in your purview that are really applicable to modern leadership?
One of the things that I think about as a speaker is because I watch lots of talks, and people are just like, here's a bunch of facts and figures, here's my pitch deck, let me run through it. I think we just learn by stories, right? Stories are basically it. So I want to leave people with just a handful of stories or quotes that change how they think about what they do. So if I was thinking about leadership, something like that Eisenhower story we were talking about earlier, where it's like, guy faces this incredible situation, overwhelming. He stops the chaos and the retreat and the despair, and he says, what positive can we find in this? And then he goes out and goes, oh, actually, not only is there kind of a positive here, this is how we win. And so I like to leave audiences with stories like that. And that's how I learn personally. Yeah. And this goes to all
But we're hardwired for narrative too.
Of course,
right?
Of course. And that goes to all the things we're talking about here, which is is what you're doing delivering value to people? And I think stories are that. It's not, I don't want to tell stories about me, because you might not like me, right?
Yeah.
Or you might go, okay, that's great, but what about X? So I want to present sort of incontrovertible, undeniable, inspiring things that are gonna stay with people.
You know the book Tell to Win?
Yeah.
Is that Peter Gruber?
Yep.
Yeah. And I think Peter is a studio executive, wildly successful billionaire dude.
Owns the Warriors.
Yeah. He's partners with Chamath and the Warriors, and the concept of telling to win or telling stories as a leader, I feel like I've learned a lot about leadership now.
Sure.
Running a company of 120 people or something. Is that a thing that you see people wildly deficient in?
Yeah, they're not good at capturing stories. They're not good at telling them, and then they're not looking for them. Yeah. Right? Having gotten to know a lot of professional and really great NCAA sports teams, it's like you realize that the coaches all basically know the same amount about basketball or baseball, but it's what do they do in the difficult. What are they teaching? What are they teaching mindset-wise? What are they teaching approach-wise? And most of the time, they just get up in these meetings and tell stories. And so these coaches read incredible amounts of books. They study history. I was at a conference a couple of days ago, and Bill Walton spoke before me. And after we were talking, he was telling me that John Wooden, in the course of 4 years, when he played for him at UCLA, talked about the other team twice. And they lost both games, he said. So his job was to tell them about the game and about what it is to be a man or to be a teammate or to be a good person.
Yeah.
And that's where stories, I think, come in. And that as a leader, you should be collecting those. I think one of the reasons politically what upsets me so much right now is that so many of the issues that we're upset about are really nonpartisan and would really be solved by sort of finding the connective tissue between people instead of fighting about this or that. And I think what we're missing with Obama not in office, again, politics aside, is that he followed for the most part the actual role of the president, which was to be the president of all people and to communicate to us what needed to be communicated in important or tragic or stressful or scary moments.
Yeah, storytelling.
Yeah, and that's the leader's job. You're
regardless of political affiliation, right?
Yeah.
It's like the leader is there to communicate and to facilitate communication between.
So you think someone thinks their job as the CEO is to solve these problems, and actually your job, you hired the people to solve the problems. Your job as a leader is to keep everyone in the boat going in the same direction, and a lot of that is storytelling and creating culture and things like that.
What about creativity and innovation inside of these places? How I see the very clear role of storytelling and leadership. What are some of the as you've been asked to speak inside of these Fortune 100 companies, what about creativity and innovation? Is there any insight there that you can offer?
Well, that's one of the things I was thinking a lot about Perennial Seller. It's like no one gets that excited about making something that we're going to sell to some other company because we know it's garbage. Yeah. You know what I mean? They get excited about being able to push themselves and do something. Like, imagine what it would be like to be an engineer at Apple. It must be I'm sure it's incredibly stressful, and sometimes you want nothing more to quit than to quit. But just the standards that you're forced to uphold and the opportunities that you have, that's what keeps people going, more than the stock options. Like, Peter Drucker would say, culture eats strategy, right? So it's like, what standards are you putting in place? What story is at the heart of your company? I think that's transcends all these things.
Yeah, especially like you need to be inspired to do your best work. Mm-hmm. There's the worker who can come in and sit down and do their stuff, but the role, and I think this is wildly misunderstood. It touches on storytelling and so many things that have been a part of our conversation, but like the ability to motivate. Tony Robbins, it's energy.
Yeah.
Like if you don't have energy to bring to something, you have basically no chance for success because everything requires energy.
Yeah.
And talk to me a little bit about the role that inspiration plays, and you can bring it again, the story aspect, but when you have spoken and when you wrote Perennial Seller, what role did inspiration play?
Well, it's like on the one hand, inspiration is wildly overrated because people think it's like, I just need to be inspired. I need this epiphany. It'll all happen. And on the other hand, it's very underrated in the sense that, like, again, if what you're trying to do is very uninspiring, who's going to give their best to make that thing? So, what are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish as an organization? What are the standards that you hold yourself to? When I think about my own books, like I'm thinking, I'm not trying to make a book to get more speaking gigs. That's a very uninspired, right? Nobody makes it into the, but that's true, right? A lot of people do it for that reason. If your interest in football is that you think it will make you famous, you're not going to get through 2-a-day practices in the summer, right? You're not going to rush to overcome a torn ACL. If your interest in photography is that you saw other people making a lot of money on Instagram, there's going to be nothing to what you're making, right? There's not going to, all the subtle things that you can't really see but you can feel are not going to be there. And so you've got to go into this for the right reasons. And I think one of the company's job, the job of the leaders of a company is to insist on and to sort of be the caretaker of those values. I built a site recently based on the Stoic stuff. We had a site called Daily Stoic, and we made this one product, and it was doing really well. And then so it's like, oh, we could do this, and you could see how easily it becomes like a cash grab, right? It's like, let's throw up some T-shirts, and it's like, no. The reason this product is doing well is because it does something for people, and they really liked it, and it took a long time to make, and we didn't cut any corners on it. And it's like, so my job as the leader is not to kill their bad ideas, but to go, here are the boundaries of what the acceptable ideas are, and here are the principles that I'm insisting that be true for us to proceed. And then once that's constrained, now everyone's really focused not on necessarily what's going to make the most money, but what's going to be best. And then that's going to be most likely to last over the long term. And then again, make the most money. Yeah. But what are your principles? If you don't know, you're in a bad spot.
I'm going to touch on the Daily Stoic
before
we hang it up. The Daily Stoic, incredible book you and Steve put together, Steve Henselman.
Yeah.
And I admit that I don't stay with it every day, but there isn't a day that when I touch the book, I don't get crazy value from it. So,
do you get the email?
I don't.
Oh yeah, so I read an email every day that's like unrelated. It's like another one. So because not everyone carries a book around with them.
Yeah.
But it's my favorite thing to do. It's like I get to do one like big thought of ancient philosophy every day in a really practical form, and then I built. It sort of blew me away. It's a 100,000 person community at this point. The book sells like crazy. And I hear from all these like senators and athletes and celebrities and stuff that are like, hey, I do this every morning, and it's just been this really incredible experience. But then, again, to go to what I was saying about the product. So we made this coin. It's like a coin you carry in your pocket. I have one actually.
I have one in my wallet. I carry it every single day.
Yeah. See, so it's this memento mori.
And I'm not sitting on it right now because it'll make noises and it'll sits in the same pocket as my microphone pack. But it's in my wallet. It goes everywhere with me every day.
Oh, I sent you one,
you
right?
You did.
Okay,
yes.
Good.
Thank you.
So it would be much easier to make a T-shirt or to make a course or there are many cheaper things that would potentially have better margins. But then you have, it was like, no, I feel a responsibility to this space that's been very good to me, that's changed my life. I don't want to be the one that's poisoning the well. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I don't want to be the one that's turning this into something sleazy or scammy, and that's very important to me. And so my job as the leader is to inspire the people that are part of that thing that I've made to adhere to those standards. And if I fall down on the job, it would be potentially lucrative in the short term, but very destructive in the long term. And so that's what I think about. Because
that's the coin for a
that's
second?
The point of the coin too, which is like, there's a quote from Marcus.
Hold it up for the camera there so they can see that.
There's a quote from Marcus Aurelius on the back, and he's basically saying, you could leave life right now, let that determine what you do and say and think. And so I think as a leader, that's a great way to think too. It's like, this could be the last time you talk to your people. This could be the last email that you write. This could be the last trip that you go on. This could be your last time pulling into the driveway after a hard day at work. So are you going to do it right? What's going to motivate you? Are you going to actually live and experience that moment? And if you're not, is that not very entitled? Like, are you not betting that you'll have 1,000 more of these mornings or whatever? Mm-hmm. And that's I just don't want to take that chance.
Memento mori.
Yeah, remember you will die. It's not the most inspiring thought at first, but actually I think it becomes profoundly inspiring if you think about it the other way.
I think about how often I go into my wallet either to like put a receipt away or take out a credit card, and that it's always there. You can see, it's worn into my leather, and not only does it inspire me, but if I'm ever at a counter and I'm having a playful conversation with the person who's across from me, or I'm with a friend and I have it, I just hand it to them. And it always starts a fascinating conversation that leaves, I feel like, either if you're on the other side of the counter, I'm like, you remember you're gonna die. Like, then they'll like, that will stick with them, or if it's on with a friend or something, there's always an inspiring conversation that comes out of it. So.
Well, and look, that's obviously very cool for me creatively and philosophically. But then just if we were talking about something that wasn't so meaningful, at the same time, that's all the hallmarks of what you want when you're making something, which is that it becomes part of a discussion, it becomes part of people's lives, it becomes something that they talk about to other people, that they recommend to other people. That's not only is that what you want because it's fulfilling, but that's what you want as a business, right? It's not like I privately took this creative life class, I'm really embarrassed about it, and I don't want anyone to know. It's like, this thing changed me, and I need it to change you. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Congratulations on the most recent book, perennial seller by Ryan Holiday. He's got 5 others too, so it's an amazing I don't know, body of work that you talked about building a body of work. I think you're well on your way. You've published more books than everybody that I know, basically, besides maybe Seth Godin.
Yeah.
But congratulations. Thank you so much for being on the show. Keep inspiring us. What's the best place for people to stay in touch? It would be at Ryan Holiday, most places.
Yeah, and then just ryanholiday.net.
Thanks, bud.
Thank you.
Of course.
Awesome.
See you again until next time. Bye, guys.